Now comes the important part of our service. Oh, sorry, I'm a little loud here. It's a new microphone.
You can't talk now.
Thanks, Ed. I needed that reassuring little build-up. So we are going to do things a little bit different this year than in years past. I actually need the lights on. And I know it seems strange that for a candlelight service, we're going to have it nice and bright here, but I promise you, you will understand in the next few minutes. Or not, I don't know. It might depend. But we are going to light the candles now. If you have your candle with you, first of all, rule number one, parents, watch your children. Remember when you were a kid and you thought it was really cool to see things on fire? Kids are no different these days, so make sure to keep an eye out for them. When you are lighting your neighbors, make sure the lit one stays up like this, and your neighbor who has the unlit one like that, where you're not dripping wax all over the place. And we don't have a definitive, like, everyone blow out your candle right at this moment. Just if you feel like you want to keep it on during my message, you can. It's not a terribly long message, so I'm sure that you can make it through. But I figure one of the best ways to make sure that we can pay attention is I thought, let's put fire in people's hands. So, Lexi, you want to come up here and we'll go ahead and... We are going to sing an old favorite, if I can keep mine lit, the journey back up here. Karen baby, so she's got to do it well. You all probably know this song, although I believe, oh, you know what, Kelly, I skipped ahead, but I think we all probably know the lyrics to This Little Light of Mine, and now you actually get to sing it holding a little light of yours. So go ahead. Light up.
You want a high five?
I do want
There we go.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Jesus is the light, I'm gonna let it shine. Jesus is the light, I'm gonna let it shine. Jesus is the light, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Can I request a verse? Hide it under a bushel, no?
It's a different version of the song.
Wait, we gotta sing it.
Hide it under a
Oh
bushel,
no! I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no! I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no! I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Thank you. And that is why communication is one of the number one things needed in a marriage. Like, if you happen to write a verse that you didn't tell your wife about into your sermon, you should probably let her know we should sing it. All right. As I mentioned earlier, if you feel uncomfortable with having something on fire around you, feel free to blow yours out at any time. This point will still be made. But I'm wondering, when we sang that song, did you mean it?
Yes.
Did you mean those words? I remember as a kid, clearly as a kid, because whenever I sing that song, it is still coming through as a child. But I remember loving that song, and we'd sing it all crazy. This little and and hide it under a bushel. No, that was like my favorite because you got to scream and say, "Oh no!" And I just love those words. But I was wondering, when we sang them, did you actually mean them? This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Hide it under a bush. Oh no! Like, that's preposterous. There's no way I'm going to hide it under a bush. I'm more proper than that. And there's my British accent for the time being. I asked that question because I think in practice, a lot of us probably don't necessarily, think back on this last week. Did you let your light shine? Think back on your interactions with people over this last week, the people that you talked to, places that you went, the gas station attendants, the person at the movie theater, the person at the restaurant. Did you let your light shine? I've come to realize that as much as I loved singing that song as a child, it's really quite difficult to actually live out when you're an adult. Or even when you were a kid, you're in high school, or you have your friends that start to not necessarily believe all the things that you believe. And I've realized throughout the years that, and I don't have too many, as some of you can tell, but I've noticed in my few years that I do have, that we're pretty good at hiding this light. I think for a lot of us, we don't even need a bush, right? We just need a wall. We just lower it, then no one can see it. For others, we might want to just set it on the side. And we're tempted to do that. But one of the people that I think of when I hear that song is my uncle. Uncle Mark. He was a preacher up in Spokane for many, many years. About 10, 11, 12 years. And I learned a lot. In fact, just about everything I know about light showmanship, I probably learned from him in one way or another. He has this incredible way about him. He was one of those people that is just able to teach something at just about any given moment. Like, I remember when I was a kid, we were driving somewhere, and I was having trouble with multiplication, and he knew that I'm a huge fan of Hot Wheels cars. I don't play with them anymore. I promise. But he knew that, and so to explain multiplication to me, he asked, Mark, if I gave you 3 boxes of Hot Wheels cars with 4 cars in each of them, how many cars do you now have? And of course, the answer is 21, but... Just want to see how awake you are. It's 13. Anyway. I'll get it eventually. But he has that way where he explains something to me so that I could understand it in words that it just meant something to me. And it didn't just stop with multiplication. He did this when in his sermons. He did this just talking about God with people. He's one of those people that when you talk with him, he could explain something to you in those types of terms on your own level. He let his light shine in some incredible ways. And in fact, he had this Starbucks that he would go to every single day. And they knew him, right? They knew, all right, here comes Mark. We need to get his black tea together and get this amount of sweetener in it. Like, they had his drink down so that by the time he made it to the ordering window, I actually witnessed this personally once. They just said, hey, Mark, go ahead and pull ahead. They just saw him coming. And the thing is that in those few moments that he would talk with those Starbucks employees, see, the time that he didn't spend ordering, he spent time with them. He would talk to them, ask them how things were going. I mean, he let his light shine in an incredible way to those Starbucks employees. And while I know that he wasn't perfect, and isn't perfect. In fact, he would use those in his sermons quite often, the times that he would mess up and then help us learn from those mistakes. My uncle would let his light shine in ways that I chase. I want to be like that. But as for me, I have to say, I feel like I'm still learning. I feel like there are times in my life where I do have a poor attitude or I get frustrated when I shouldn't. Sometimes I take this light and I want to set it down somewhere for one reason or another. Whether it is my poor attitude or because I just don't feel like it. You ever have those days? You just don't feel like it? I've had those days. Maybe you've struggled with this light. Maybe you've struggled with that temptation that builds up inside of you just to set it aside. Just don't remember it. Forget about it. Take some sort of a weight off. Don't tell anyone. I mean, we realize, when we think about those things, like don't tell anyone about this light, don't recognize it, set it on the side. Do you realize what this light even is? I think I probably sat through a number of candlelight services, and I had a general idea as to what the light was. But when I was looking at Scripture over the past few weeks, there was one that just came to mind that really talked about light. And it's not out of a Christmas verse, but it's okay, we'll get to that a little bit later. But it's this verse that Kelly's going to put up here out of Matthew 5, and it's out of the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus says, "You are the light of the world. A town built on the hill cannot be hidden, neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Have you ever been asked what your dream job is? Remember, I mean, we probably were asked that a lot more when we were like 18, 19 years old, and people would ask if you could do anything. But money wasn't a factor. Let's just pretend all your needs are met, in fact, some of your wants. If you could do anything, what would it be? I remember when I was a kid, that was an easy answer for me because I loved Jim Carrey, and I was like, I want to be the next Jim Carrey. That's my dream job. Except for him, he really doesn't have to worry about money. But as I grew up and I went to Bible college, I remember my answer kind of changed on that a little bit. And I started answering it in a way that sounded pretty good. I used to say that my dream job would be to go somewhere and just hand out food all day to those that had a need. That's what I would love to do, just go and hand out food all day. And it sounds good, and it made me feel good that I could do that. But I realized something quite a few years later after I was answering that all the time, and that is that doing something like that requires virtually nothing of me. I mean, it sounds good to go and hand out food. It makes me look like a good person, right? Look at that guy. He just wants to go hand out food. Oh, look at poor Mark. And if he had all of his needs met, he would just go hand out food. And it would make me feel good. And the thing is, I pictured myself working hard, handing out food, but that was it. I never really pictured myself actually talking with these people. I never really pictured myself having relationships with them or actually telling them why I wanted to give them food. It was just, let's go out here and make myself feel good. But did you notice what Jesus said at the end of his passage there, those few verses? It's something kind of interesting and something that I don't think I've really even thought of before. He said, let your light shine so that people can see your good deeds, so that they might glorify your Father in heaven. See, that's a humbling thing I had to realize about my dream job, is that I didn't want it so that God could be glorified. I wanted it because I could be glorified. I wanted it so that people could look at me and say, wow, look at that guy. Look at what he's chosen to do with his life. I think God calls us to have this thing so that people could see God in us, not just our good works. I believe that this light represents how much of Christ we let shine through our actions. I think that's the simple answer, and I think that's really what Jesus was getting at here. Your light, this little thing that you have here, is what your good works that actually speak to who Christ is. It's your little things that you do that give Christ to people, that illuminate something for them. But did you know that I could go out and do a whole bunch of good things without ever actually letting my light shine? In fact, we probably do this all the time. How often have you patted yourself on the back because you went out and you bought a homeless family some food, but that was it? Or you go and maybe you gave a few bucks to someone, or you filled up their gas tank or something, but you never had a conversation with them. I know I've done that plenty of times. And in those instances, really what I'm thinking I'm doing is letting my light shine, when in reality, I'm just doing something nice. My light really didn't shine because I didn't show it to them. I just showed them a good person. I didn't show them why I did those things. So many times we do good things without ever bringing God into the picture. But you see, everything good that we do, everything that we do for that matter, should point people to God, not ourselves. It should point people to the source of this light, not the person who's holding it. There's no great worth or value in Mark Thomas, but there is some incredible value in the person who gave me this light.